What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Billy Napier just couldn't leave it alone. Just couldn't.
What's it here, Connor?
It, I would say, is good standing, momentum, positive vibes, a chance to clap back at the haters, a chance to make the buyout, which is $19.4 million, a distant memory and not a household topic of conversation in the Sunshine State. I'd say that's it. That's what it qualifies when you lose to South Florida, which we don't call South Florida. We call USF on this podcast. We are respecters.
You know, that's a negative spin. Positive spin, he couldn't leave history alone. You know, Billy Napier is the number one opponent of history. One thing about him is he's going to be in those record books.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get to all the 5 other SEC games that we previewed involving power conference teams. But when Florida loses at home to South Florida, and it's Florida's first home loss to a non-Miami FSU school from the state of Florida since 1938, the FDR administration.
1938.
Yeah.
This is a new deal. Billy Napier's in town.
Was the New Deal in effect in 1938?
I don't know.
Because Great Depression, I think it was. I think the New Deal was in effect in 1938, but you would at least have to go back and look it up. Maybe New Deal was emerging, forming. It was certainly earlier in the New Deal than year 4 of the Billy Napier era.
But he just loves the state of Florida. He's bringing up, this is like Social Security, you know? Every man a king in the state of Florida, and everybody gets a win in Gainesville.
Good Lord. No. So we obviously have to discuss that. And like I said, we will get to the other SEC games involving power conference teams. And where just the conference stands right now after a very noteworthy start, I think, the first 2 weeks of the season. So we will have takes on all that. But first, a quick word from our friends at Dabble, which, guys, we're recording this on Sunday at 11:30. This is ahead of the first true NFL Sunday of the year. Maybe you got in on a daily fantasy action on Thursday night or on Friday night while you're watching the Chiefs ultimately end their dynasty. Some are saying no, but if you are getting into the daily fantasy space, Dabble is the best place to do it. They have wasted no time making a name for themselves. The social function, it is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports for making picks, but let's be honest, if you're here, you're doing so for college football, NFL, get in on that action. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash, no deposit required. That is promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. All right, well, Billy Napier. What if I had told 100 Florida fans about the early season gauntlet? Do you think there would have been one of them, just one of them, that would have picked USF as a loss, or even suggested, Connor, we realize we're talking about games 3 through 6 here, but don't sleep on that matchup against USF. Do you think 1 out of 100 would have brought that point up?
You know what's crazy? Like, I've seen Bama fans joking about ULM. I didn't see that on the Florida side because I think a lot of the buzz coming out of the offseason was so positive for them. We could talk about, and I'm sure we will, Alex Golesh and how strong they were in week 1
we will get to
against
him for
Boise.
sure.
But, like, I don't think anybody was looking at that game and being like, hey, you know, watch out for Golesh and the Bulls.
Do you know the 1938 game that Florida lost to a non-Miami Florida State school in the state of Florida at home? That's a deep stat.
Is it Florida Tech? What do we got here?
Stetson. Good old Stetson.
Stetson, the Mad Hatters came into the town, and I don't even know which coach. I could imagine it was an old-timey coach, but I'm sure they gave him a bad day.
I cannot tell you the coach. Can tell you that Corey Kluber went there. Jacob deGrom went there. A certain 25-year-old Connor went there for a day on their campus that I will certainly never forget for very different reasons, but that's a different story for a different time.
Waterboy was filmed there. So
Waterboy was filmed there. Great point. Yes, people forget this. I'm going to say the 2025 loss to USF, so much worse. So much worse. The way that it happened is just so embarrassing. And this is going to, I'm really trying not to take credit away from USF here. Okay, that's not what I'm trying to do. But, Will, this was not some quarterback injury or you couldn't recover from some fluky play, although Florida's defenders did cancel each other out on that long touchdown that USF had. But you had spitting, You had horrendous tackling to set up the go-ahead field goal,
And
which
in a
was, of
week, by the
course,
way,
kicked
where
by
spitting has
Gramatica.
already happened several times. Like, you feel like there's been a spitting memo across football that, like, every coach is like, this is what happens when you spit. You get DQ'd, Jalen Carter.
Is spitting having a moment? That's
Spitting
what
is
we're
having the
asking.
biggest moment, maybe in football history.
Jalen Carter, a Popka native
Mm.
from the state of Florida.
He was
It's
framed.
it's
Dak Prescott did it first. Big week for Mississippi
pop.
State.
It's a popular time of year to be spitting. All
Mhm.
right. Everybody's doing it. Just probably shouldn't be doing it when the game is on the line in that spot. But you have all that. You have just horrible clock management. Billy Napier with his timeouts at the end, inept special teams, just wildly conservative play calling, and zero sense of urgency. Like zero sense of urgency. Just completely inexcusable loss. Inexcusable in every possible way. I've yet to see a single person say Billy Napier isn't actually at fault for this. He is at fault because you just can't do that on your home field. There are certain things that people are going to say, oh, that job is crazy. You know, the fans are blah, blah, blah.
Not
You
this week,
can't lose
buddy.
on your home. Not this. Not that you're going to lose to Florida State at home every once in a while. Maybe Miami's going to come into your house and boat race you if they have a really good team and a future number 1 overall pick. You can't lose to USF on your home field. And it's as simple as that. And if people ever, I want people to remember this moment right now because people have already done the revisionist history BS with Dan Mullen. And they've already done it. And my guy Matt Barry's done this too. And I hate it. I can't stand it. It's ridiculous. They forget these moments of, well, that's inexcusable. Like when Florida is letting up half 100 to Samford and people are pretending like the team is totally engaged.
Mhm.
Like, give me a break with that stuff. Give me a break. Remember how you felt in this moment of realizing that South Florida, USF, we call them, they came into your school and beat you when you were a top 15 team, not when you had an interim coach, when you had a year 4 coach with sneaky preseason playoff buzz, when you had all the time in the world to prepare because you had an FCS opponent in week 1 that was from LIU
Mhm.
that nobody even knows where
The
that
AI
is.
team.
The AI team that somebody made up in college football 26. It's Brooklyn, whatever, Long Island. You just can't do that. You can't, especially when you have a healthy DJ Lagway who's supposed to be your ultimate cheat code. You're supposed to be able to play that card and say, get out of jail free.
Mhm.
Inexcusable, man. Just totally, totally inexcusable. That sucked. And when the Billy Napier eulogy is written, that had better be part of the lead.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach in college football, everybody comes in and talks about building a program, building an identity. And I think those things that you just mentioned exactly in order have been the identity of the Billy Napier football team when things have not gone this way, right? You talk about, the clock management. You talked about special teams. You talked about being aggressive
Constantly.
and then conservative. Like the whole, like the scared money, you don't make money quote was like the best PR of all time because Billy Napier has been his coach kind of scared over his time at Florida. There have been these wins, there have been these moments where he's pumping the fist and, he's got like the strong jawline and the buzz cut. And you're like, okay,
Snap the ball.
like he's looking like he's got it all under control. But then in these big moments, we talked about this last year at Tennessee, these big moments where it's like,
Yep.
this is the coach that you want on your sideline in these big moments. And then he actually just becomes what we imagine, McElwain being or something like the coach that just doesn't know what to do or the coach that overthinks it. And so, yeah, I think I hate to say this, but like I predict UF drops some type of injury thing to kind of soften this blow. I'm sure they're gonna be like actually Lagway's 80%, something like that. So I don't want to get quote unquote cold take tier and have people in
You're
your
probably right.
mentions because I'm sure they're gonna come out and say actually Lagway had a bionic leg for that whole game. But in reality, if you have a quarterback that we've seen be that talented, specifically on the downfield shots, and yet the downfield shots don't go your way. The big downfield play is for USF. At some level, you got to say our guys are better than your guys. At some level, you got to say run straight somebody down there somewhere, and we go get this touchdown. And I feel like they were kind of building a prison of their own mind offensively, and then defensively. Can't say they played a great game or anything. I wouldn't exactly say it was the defense's fault until the end of the game when suddenly it was
Yep.
like, I mean, this is like shoe throw times 2 almost because shoe throw at least took a million things going right. This was like, I know how this is going to go. You couldn't have done that.
Jesse Simonton, he tweeted the shoe throw was the death of the Mullen era. Will the spitting be the nail in the coffin for the Napier era? And you'd get plus money on those odds. at this point. You get minus money on those odds. I mean, I don't know why I said plus money, but
Mhm.
in other words, yes, it is more likely that is the end of the Napier era, or at least the beginning of the end, the thing that you just can't get past. You just can't get past. And for those saying like, what about Marcus Freeman last year? He lost to NIU. Marcus Freeman was in year 3
Mhm.
and he was building, and he at that point he was building up Notre Dame. And you could maybe say like Billy Napier has been building up Florida. He wasn't coming off like a 10-win season. And also, Marcus Freeman then turned around and won every single game before the national championship.
Mhm.
If Billy Napier does that, knock me over with a feather, okay? Because this team clearly has issues. And I hate to just do the thing where we say bad loss, coach is going to get fired, because cause and effect just doesn't always work like that in college football. And we're not going to do the thing where Billy Napier is fired on Friday or anything, or like fired on Sunday after this game or anything like that. Watch me get cold taked. But you endured all of this of the last year. You endured getting off the mat after Miami, getting off the mat after A&M. Everybody says you're dead man walking. There's no way that you're going to survive this year. There's no way you're getting a year. There's no way you're getting a year 4. And you put together that win streak and you feel like you have something. And it's all because you were able to keep DJ Lagway. And you did all these things right. And you're bringing back dudes in the trenches. And people are finally talking about you in a positive light going into the season. And then you do that in year 4. In year 4, Will, it just can't happen. It just can't. And there's not a soul in that locker room that would say, well, it's actually because of this, this. No. Shouldn't have even been a game. You're a 3-score favorite at home. Take care of business. And if you're going to take care of business in the way that you were brought in to take care of business, it shouldn't have been that close in the first place, because you should have had the advantage in the trenches. And that wasn't evident enough for this team, which I'll hand up, admit, thought this team would be more imposing in the trenches. That has not been the case so far.
That is why
Maybe
we
they'll
like this
figure some
team.
things
I mean,
out.
it wasn't even
Yep.
about really like cool, Lagway is cool, but it was more about them pushing people around, you know?
Yeah. I don't think here's this is going to sound hopeful, but here's how I see this playing out, Will. And tell me if I'm crazy, because maybe I am. I don't think Florida will lose the next 4 games that it has coming up in this gauntlet. I don't
Okay.
think Florida is going to be 1-5. Okay. I don't think that'll happen. The next 3 are against top 7 teams. And then the 4th is a road game at Texas A&M. We talked about games 3 through 6 and how important that was going to be for Florida. And man, if they could just get out, having split those games, and then you're 4-2 going into the latter half of the schedule, who knows what we're talking about. Okay. I bet Florida wins one of those games. Florida's going to at least go 1-3 in those next 4. I don't see them falling to 1-5. Should we maybe even include Mississippi State in the gauntlet now? Because if so, Georgia's after that, and now it's a 6-game gauntlet, and the
State's
gauntlet
really
just keeps
frisky,
getting
man. Come
extended.
on now.
Everything looks difficult when you can't beat USF at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tough pill to swallow, is that you have lost trust. You have lost 8 months of offseason of feeling like you have turned the corner. Even if you get to that point through this game 3 through 6 gauntlet and you're at 3-3, which feels ambitious right now. Definitely feels ambitious to say that they're going to get 2 of those wins and that they're going to split. You're out of playoff contention very likely, because you're sitting there with a home loss to USF. So you're not even talking about a 9-3 playoff team when you lose at home to a group of 5 team. And that is going to be the toughest pill to swallow, and why this just feels like the beginning of the end.
You know what's so interesting, Connor? We literally recorded this same podcast or a version of it last year. I was trying to go back and look. I believe it was after the Texas A&M game, and I remember coming on here and like laughing and being like, "I told you all about Billy Napier." Da da da. And that's when we got to really think about next steps, because exactly as you just said, this schedule is so hard. We talked about this a little bit with Sam Pittman at Arkansas. This schedule is so hard that the longer you allow this coach and this team to kind of play the games, the more likely that they're going to upset bigger teams. And that's exactly what happened last year, you know? And so if you've seen enough out of Billy Napier, which again, we have enough of four years of tape on Billy Napier to say who he is as a coach, I would say make the move sooner rather than later. But go ahead.
Here's the only difference though, because you're right, and athletic directors 100% believe in that, and they will fire a coach that's at 4-6, even though they have bowl possibilities still on the table, just because they don't want to see
Yep.
a 2-game winning streak, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, you got to keep him, you
The
can't fire
famous
him, blah blah
Les
blah.
Miles carry off the field against A&M. I was there.
Yep,
Yep.
exactly that. The only difference is the Lagway piece, because there's no excuse in the way that there would have been last year. Last year was, well, wait and see. Wait and see what it looks like. The Graham Mertz injury, it was unfortunate when it happened, but you've got Lagway in your back pocket, and that's going to be the game changer. You had Lagway on this field the entire game. And we could talk about, getting into camp and not being fully healthy and what that looked like. And I do think it's hurt them at different points. And it's perhaps why they've been so conservative, ridiculously conservative in their passing game and all these horizontal passes. Like, it's making Georgia look like it's, the air raid or something like that. Like, it's
Oof.
the way that they would attack downfield. And I mean like the downfield air raid, not the side to side air raid. But we're talking about a team that should have no excuses anymore. And they had those excuses last year. And so that's why Scott Strickland was able to say, well, guys, wait and see the Lagway piece, because he was always brought in to be the game changer. Your game changer's out there and he's not changing the game for you.
That's kind of exactly my point, because the easy counter is, what about DJ Lagway? And the answer is, he just had 16 points against USF at home. I don't think this program changing player, at least under Billy Napier. There is a chance, to your point, that you bring in somebody else and he can unlock that from Lagway. But at the end of the day, I said this at the time, guys. This is nothing new out of me. If you go back and look at the LSU and the Ole Miss game at Lagway, it's a lot of those downfield shots. It was a lot of these big chunk plays. It wasn't like he was putting together these consistent, masterful 80% completion games. So I still think there was a lot to be unlocked with Lagway. It's not that, Napier is some Lagway whisperer that is just getting the absolute most out of him, and you got to have him to make that work. So I think at the end of the day, you are what your record says you are. And 5-star quarterback, great trench play aside, this is what we got. So I would kind of say that and caution in that way, which is that whatever you think about Billy Napier, if you're Scott Strickland, if you still believe in him, definitely let him finish out the year. If you don't, though, you might end up with that outcome just by exactly what happened last year. Or, I mean, remember how close they were to winning the Georgia game last year. Not to say that's going to happen again, but this is a very strange sport, especially when you have that style of quarterback and a guy that can allegedly hit downfield throws. We haven't seen it this year. But that being said, like, I, what's kind of interesting to me? I don't want to sit on this too long because whatever, but after seeing any given Saturday, the amount of kind of gel the team had after Mertz went down, the role he had and all that. And now, unfortunately, a lot of this is going to be on Lagway as a human, not as a player, but to keep this locker room together, because they know it's all about him. They know the offense revolves around him. And so we're about to see a ton, you could say the loss is a little bit on Lagway, but almost unnecessarily so early in his career, that so much of this locker room and the future of this team is going to be on Lagway's shoulders.
They had some of the, they had scoring plays that were wiped off the board, penalties and stuff like that. And there are certainly going to be moments in which we say DJ Lagway is the real deal. He's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And there are even moments in this game in which I'm like, can't teach that. Graham
Yep.
Mertz wasn't making that play. And I get it. I fully get it. But everything has changed with this loss. It just has. And I said Florida was the ultimate agent of chaos in 2025.
Correct.
None of my scenarios included a loss to USF. None.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely none. So now there is going to be magnified pressure in a way that just would not have been the case if they're going into this 2-0. If you're going into this 2-0 and you tell yourself, all right, we can get to 1-3 in this 4-game stretch, then we're 3-3, and who knows, maybe we're frisky. It depends how we play in these games. Context is important. Even if USF ends up as a playoff team representing the group of 5, which right now, how can you not have that team top 10 even, with the way that they've started off the year by killing Boise State and then going into Florida and winning that game?
Yeah. What else could they do? Honestly, yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. And now they're going to have to go to Miami, and some will say, well, if they lose against Miami, it's like, well, Miami's number 5 in the country.
Right.
All right. If they go 2-1, I still think they would be worthy of being a legit top 10 or top 15 team. But there is still going to be that stench. It's just going to exist when you're Florida. And so I feel like people will say like, oh, that job's impossible. You just can't win there. You can't win, blah, blah, blah. No. Those pieces are in place. Those resources are there. That fan support is there. You can't just chalk it up to, well, yeah, it's the job, blah, blah, blah. There are certain places that you just can't go, and you can't lose to that program. By the way, Alex Golesh, who we're going to get to him right now, took over that program later than Billy Napier took over Florida. And do we need to remind everyone of what Alex Golesh inherited at USF? Because I think there are a lot of people that worse than Basura. Basura would look at what Alex Golesh inherited and go, buddy, that's not even good enough. Okay, leave that on the outside. Take that to the dumpster. This is the inside Basura. We need to take that to the outside and maybe take that out to the curb, because that's how bad it was when they were 4-29 in his previous 3 seasons. And I think we remember a lot of the good moments that USF 4-29 in their 3 previous seasons. They were a 1-11 team the year before. And we remember a lot of like good USF moments, and even the war on I-4 in 2017, which it was one of my favorite college football games of that season. And so we could look at that and say, well, you know what, it wasn't that bad. And now it's a, a pretty big university for like a group of 5 school. And yeah, they've had, they had the 2007 season, obviously, where they were incredibly relevant. They had a minute with Charlie Strong and Willie Taggart where they looked like he inherited a dumpster fire. Okay. And that is a guy that has not made excuses. And I have so much respect for him, because you heard him come on this show before he even coached a game there. And he's talking about, I'm getting 4 hours of sleep. I'm working myself to the bone because I know we have a long way to go. And we got to be able to convince guys this is a place to be, because if we don't, they can all leave in the portal. And he didn't retain everyone, but he retained darn near close to everyone. And at a time when group of 5 programs aren't doing that, he deserves so much credit for doing that. And I love the story. You guys know I've loved the story. Like, first generation American from Moscow comes to the U.S.
built for the Siberian winters.
Gainesville
can't scare him.
He is like this guy who grew up like loving college football in Brooklyn and not having cable. And he's watching Florida and Tennessee, ironically enough. And he's watching Michigan, Ohio State. And he just finds a way onto Jim Tressel's staff at Ohio State. And I bring this all up because he has worked himself up to get to this place. And he's going to have an opportunity to get bigger and better jobs that if he wants them. And I don't know ultimately what he wants. I imagine he wanted a cake shake from Portillo's on Saturday night. I hope he got himself that. Maybe a nice Italian beef, sweet peppers, not hot. And I hope that he had a moment where he was able to step back and say, dang, man, this is special what I've been able to do. You saw the emotion in his voice. And I wonder how many SEC programs will legitimately look Alex Golesh's way if and when they have a vacancy at season's end, maybe even the very program that he was coaching against last night.
I was going to say, it appears that we have a 1-to-1 fit here. I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's always going to be hard for me to feel sorry for any university that has the amount of resources and in-state recruiting that Florida does.
Correct.
That's the thing about the University of Florida. It is an amazing university. They have a ton of resources. And, flashback to like the U documentary where they talked about, the state of Miami, like whoever could lock down the most of Florida.
Rope off I-4. That's what you're doing. Yep.
Like whoever could win the most of the recruits in Florida would often be a powerhouse in the state of Florida year in and year out, whatever that would be, back in the day or now, because there's so many in-state kids, even the 3-stars and stuff that are kind of slept on because there's so much football happening in Florida. You talk about, some of the more like underprivileged schools or the schools out by the coast that don't get as much love. So I think Florida will never be dead in the water, in the way that kind of middle America, we've talked about Nebraska here and there, where it's like, well, you got to import all your talent in Nebraska. So you better like really have something you're selling there. Florida, all you got to do is kind of throw a rock and you'll hit a couple of like 3, 4, 5-stars that can help you out. And we saw that also with Golesh, right? And so that being said, I want to put the credit on Golesh and not put the blame on Billy Napier, because they both played their style of football at the end of the day, right? And from the beginning, USF looked like they belonged in this game, and I was running the SDS account over the weekend. And it was one of the things that I noticed, I tweeted out from there, is that Florida was like celebrating like first downs in this game. And I was like,
faking injuries in this game.
Yes. Like, it's like, you guys made this into a conference game. Which conference? Not the SEC. And so point being, like, USF felt like they belonged the entire time. Golesh had these ridiculous odds against him the entirety of his coaching career. He talked about, his wild story coming up kind of through the hypo coaching tree, having this weird path. And so it's like the meme with the dominoes falling, and it's like Jefferson Pilot Sports has created Alex Golesh beats. He's like watching Tennessee games.
His dad was a truck driver for Little Caesars, man. Living in New York. Like, There's just no connection to college football
Yeah.
with his upbringing whatsoever. And that's why I always give him the benefit of the doubt, and I just think he's the real deal.
Yeah, and I mean, that being said, it's about the hand you're dealt and what you do with it, and I think that, Billy has been the golden boy at different points and has not exactly capitalized on that, whereas Golish has been the opposite of that. He took over a program that should be the death of a coaching career. Usually guys jump too early and they end up in a place that like USF, and you go, oh, you should have just been an offensive coordinator, you should have just been a coach in waiting, and just played your hand. But he said I wasn't scared of that. He said, I'm going to go in there, lose sleep because I'm not scared. And I think that's the exact type of that's real scared money don't make money mentality. So shout out Golish, man, because there are so few like him in this sport.
That's a good point because, and we're gonna put some respect on this guy's name in a minute here. But think about Jeff Lebby. Jeff Lebby, who also considered a Heupel disciple, which rhymes, and that's weird to say out loud. But Jeff Lebby was working under Lane, and he had play calling duties. But why did Jeff Lebby leave Ole Miss for the same role at Oklahoma? Well, it was because he wanted to be able to get total autonomy on the offensive side of the ball and not necessarily feel like this is somebody else's offense that he's running. Alex Golesh was on Josh Heupel's Tennessee staff, and he was calling plays there. And Tennessee made sure to make note of that. And in part because they wanted Alex Golesh to do like bigger and better things. They wanted him to go on and like be able to have a chance to run his own program. And there are a lot of different ways that you can do that behind the scenes to make it look like, hey, you're bringing in and promoting and doing all the right things that way. But Alex Golesh could have easily gone to another power conference program, worked for a defensive minded head coach, run his own offense, and then said, all right, maybe now I'm ready to take on my opportunity. He took, in a way, like that is an extra leap to do that.
Oh yeah.
To go to USF in the way that he did. And it makes it all the more impressive that he's been able to do this and now very much in the driver's seat at a time when, look at the top 25. There wasn't a single group of 5 team in the top 25, I believe, in week 2. And now they'll be in there. They'll definitely be in there. But just a very, very wild Saturday, the way that it played out with those two head coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. The UCF coaching tree is just on fire right now. It's crazy. You look
Right.
at Levy, Tennessee, the offense is looking awesome. So, yeah, like I said, I don't want this to be the Dump on Billy podcast. I really don't, because I want it to be the I'm Happy for Alex Golesh podcast, because it didn't feel like a fluke. It really didn't. And I can't wait to see what that man does in the future.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about the big headliner game, the only game involving top 25 teams on Saturday. I usually don't like to come on a Sunday recap pod and go, I nailed this one, because honestly, I think you all listening to this have way more fun when I am completely wrong. And nobody wants to hear someone just pat themselves on the back constantly and, oh, I was right about this, I was right about that. But when I say that Oklahoma will win 21-10, and then they win 24-13, I feel pretty good about the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I do. And this game played out exactly how I thought it would. This is exactly the type of showcase game that Brent Venables needed. If you're not going to win this game with a true freshman quarterback, and everybody's talking about the 21-5 record against redshirt freshmen or true freshman quarterbacks that Brent Venables had, if you're not going to win this game on this stage in that building, what's your purpose there? Get somebody else in there, because that is teed up for Brent Venables. It just was. And on the flip side, you need to be able to watch, if you're Brent Venables, your handpicked quarterback look the part. Maybe not light it up from a start to finish, 45 points, Oklahoma offensive old type way, but do enough things to make people say, dang, that guy's pretty good. And John Mateer absolutely checked that box on Saturday night. Win-win for Venables in that type of way. Like this is exactly the type of performance that if you are a pro Venables, very anti-Lincoln Riley person, which Lord knows there are plenty
the Venn
of those
diagram's
in
a
Oklahoma.
circle. If you're very pro Brent Venables, you hate Lincoln Riley.
Like, this is it. This was the prototype for that. And just to have the year-to-year difference between game day appearances last year with the Heupel reunion, and it wasn't exactly year to the day, but it was very close, another September game, and you're hosting game day again, and with kind of the lack of headliner games, that all eyes are going to be on you. A lot of opinions about John Mateer are going to be formed in this game, and that place was rocking. Absolutely rocking on Saturday night. not quite a Toby Keith win. We're not going to go there and say it's a Toby Keith win for Brent Venables, but this is why you hired me win for Brent Venables.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you picked up on this. So a little peel behind the onion, guys. Had a little bit of misfire with our first podcast. We had recorded one, ended up having to re-record it. I don't know if you picked up on this. The first time I had initially written down that I picked Michigan. And then after like thinking about it and going back through it, I picked Oklahoma because I had this vision of exactly what played out. You kind of sold me on this, which is on one side of the ball, we have John Mateer, who's just sitting there laying it all on the line. And man, what a masterful performance by him. I feel like we talked about in the preseason, he could have a little bit of Max Duggan in his game. It's exactly what we saw there in terms of running the ball, being tough, taking the hits, making mistakes, but then getting over the mistakes and just having a very short memory as a quarterback. And then on the other side of the ball, you see Brent Venables with just like that wry Skeletor smile, drawing up these blitzes. Guys are kind of talked about guys coming out of the hot dog stand, just chasing down Bryce Underwood. And Bryce Underwood never looked comfortable for a second in that game. And they just kept cutting to Brent Venables. He was just sitting there, big Grinch smile. You could see the corners of his smile on his face. And it was like, this is why I took this job. This is what I love about football, you know?
This is why he took over defensive coordinator duties again.
Yep.
To do stuff like that. And his voice is gone by halftime. Holly Rose interviewing him, and you're realizing that man is going to be raspy on Sunday. There's no way that he's going to wake up after this game feeling like he has any semblance of a voice. And it was worth it because you're right. Bryce Underwood was very, very overwhelmed. Experience matters. It really does. And I don't want to be too cliche with that or just doubt what Bryce Underwood could be, because obviously he was so unbelievably decorated. When things are right with him, he's still going to do some things over the course of the game that make you go, wow. I thought they were too conservative with him, and there were probably different ways in which they could have gotten that offense going a little bit more with some of the quick hitter stuff on the outside.
It wasn't running sideline to sideline because it felt like every time they swung that ball out, there was an Oklahoma guy also smiling, sitting there going, I see you.
Good point. Yeah, Justice Haynes was clearly not particularly happy, the Alabama transfer who had to be separated from Bryce Underwood. And then
he's like, I'm going back to Alabama. Just kidding. He did not think that.
No, he's like, I'm going to come out of the halftime and make one cutback and go 75 yards to the house. That was really it for the Oklahoma defense. The only time where he said, yeah, they really just didn't have it on that. Like they were ready to go. They were absolutely ready to go. And that combined with what Mateer showed us on Saturday is everything for the Oklahoma playoff conversation. Okay. It doesn't mean Oklahoma is got to be a 10-2 team, but if you are selling yourself on that belief, you are selling yourself on it because of those all important elements. Mateer getting rolling from the start in that atmosphere was huge. I thought that 3rd and 9 pass that he threw to the tight end was monumental just to get him in the right headspace. He played with a ton of confidence, maybe even a little bit too much confidence at one point. That throw that he had into traffic where even Fowler was kind of taken aback by it. Like, this is kind of the John Mateer experience, the pick overthrow. He's going to do some stuff like that. But the good with him is just so good.
19 carries for 74 yards. This is so crazy because it's not even like he had like the Jackson Arnold 200-yard day or whatever. It was like, no, he's going to run that thing down your throat over and over. And he's going to run through a bleep, bleep face, as Marshawn Lynch said.
They got to figure that out. They got to figure out the non-Mateer running options. And he admitted as much after the game. They need to get that part of the game going. Javonte Barnes had a nice game, but getting Jaden Ott fully healthy is going to be really, really big for them. They need to get that element because that's going to take this offense to a different place. And if it is that Mateer reliant in the ground game, it's going to be tough sledding. Obviously, the quarterback run game opens up so much for that offense.
Have we settled on the story with Jaden Ott, though? Do we know what's going on there? Because I was definitely keyed on him.
I'm going to say shoulder. Okay. I'm going to say shoulder and then just some post-spring transfer stuff. We'll just leave it at that. We'll leave it at because the shoulder combined with that element leads me to more of like, well, he hasn't exactly earned a ton of grace from the coaching staff yet to make him feel like he should be out there for 30 to 40 snaps in a game. You know, maybe that's more so what it is at this point. But the good news is if you're Oklahoma, you've won this game. You won this game by having John Mateer look the part. The cutting ability is where I feel most wrong about him. Everything else, I feel like I've had a very fair, conservative outlook of his game. But the ability to cut on a dime, man.
You think he's deceptively athletic? Is that what you're saying? You think you undersold John Mateer?
No, I think they said it best on the broadcast. And then we throw out all the deceptively sneaky athletic crap. Yeah, he looks like a running back. He,
Mhm.
he just looks like a running back. His vision, the way that his body moves, if you just saw him with the football in his hands, you'd say, "Who's that white running back? Is that Will Shipley? What's he doing?"
Mhm.
That's not quite Christian McCaffrey, but
Danny Woodhead.
as, we love Danny Woodhead. Shout out North Platte, Nebraska. Great
Mhm.
place. Shadron State. Um, I talked to Danny Woodhead probably like 12 years ago for a half hour, and it was one of my favorite conversations I had
What a
in
king.
my time in Nebraska. Good dude, really good dude, Danny Woodhead. The ability that he has, though, it just changes how defenses approach him. That face mask at the end, too, when there's 3 minutes left in that game and they're kind of marching down the field, Oklahoma needs to be able to run the football. They know they're going to be predictable. That was kind of the saving grace of the Oklahoma ground game, is that they
Mhm.
were able to still, move the chains when they weren't going to be throwing the ball. But his cutting forced that face mask
Mhm.
and allowed them to kind of close that game out. And you need to be able to do that. Like those are the moments that can make the difference in a game like that, especially if you're going to play in these defensive struggles, more low scoring games, which I think Oklahoma is still going to be part of a good amount of those. But man, the play that he made, Will, where he escapes the free rusher, he keeps his eyes downfield, just delivers that dime down the right sideline. Talk about why Brent Venables was brought to Oklahoma. That's why John Mateer was brought into Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, this was certainly, we've talked about proof of concepts around the SEC. This was certainly a proof of concept for this marrying of Arbuckle and Mateer on one side of the ball. He talked about total
Great
autonomy,
point.
right? Such a big deal. And then on the defensive side of the ball, and like I said, whenever things don't go our ways as professionals, I'm sure we've all had this happen to us where it's like, I'm gonna get back to what I'm great at, And like I said, the thing that Venables is great at is scaring the mess out of quarterbacks, like really just making a bad day. And this is such a great opportunity, right, for the brand of Oklahoma, and a brand that has been a little bit up and down over the last couple of years. What are they in the NIL era? What are they as Texas starts to kind of rise up and be like the hip new fun team? And from Oklahoma's standpoint, man, I mean, proud to have them in the SEC. Honestly, you talk about the Alabama win last year and some of the things they were able to do. Yeah, it was not a fun team to watch, but the highs were really high. And then you go this year, it's like, hey, how many times or the last couple of seasons is it like SEC statement game outside of the top 2 or 3 teams, and it's like, "Oh, there's a little bit of a letdown." It was great to see Oklahoma against this Michigan brand that, and we look back at it and it's like, "Yeah, of course, this is how this happened," right? But I would say, like, you never really know with Michigan. In the same way, and we'll get to the Kansas game as well, like, we got a good version of Kansas. We could have just as easily gotten a version of Michigan where you go, "Wow, oh my god, they get this five-star quarterback. Their defense is flying around. Justice Haynes looks awesome." And it was the ability to just, like I said, take a punch and keep going. And I feel like Materia is so custom built for that. And one final thing on that, I feel like the identity of this team is they capitalize on their opportunities, but they'll give the other team opportunities. It's just the fact that they will just come right back. It's not that they played perfect, but it's almost like, okay, you got me that time. I'm now it's going to motivate me to get my lick back a little bit.
They're a lot more resilient than they were last year. They're a lot more fun to watch than they were last year. That sounds like just a shot at Jackson Arnold, and it's not entirely. There's no way Jackson Arnold at that stage of his career is looking at a free rusher, shaking him, and then throwing that perfect of a ball down the right sideline.
Hmm.
And it's tough because I do think Deion Burks is making a big, big difference for the passing game, and having him last year would have been important for Jackson Arnold early on, and for him to have such a lost season with injuries. It is a bummer to look back on, but you're right. You bring up the Arbuckle piece. You see the confidence that he has to step into these throws, the confidence that's there within the scheme, and not second guessing himself. And Oklahoma fans saw a very talented quarterback. I said talented in such a Chicago way right there. I don't know why I did that.
Hmm.
Talented.
Hmm.
They saw an extremely talented quarterback last year second guess himself, and they did not feel like they had a guy that was in sync with the offense. John Mateer is going to be in sync with the offense. I really don't question that. You're not going to see moments in which he's doubting what he's seeing. He might have moments where he takes too many risks, but he is so different from Jackson Arnold.
Hmm.
It just very, very different. And it was evident. I thought he passed the eye test. My brother was texting me this morning like, buddy, Mateer is the real deal. He's going to be fun. I don't know what Heisman conversations are going to be had with him at this point, just because the stats are actually really promising. He's got 8 consecutive games with at least a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown.
Hmm.
So that's working in his favor. He could have a 30-10 type season easily, and I don't really think it'd be that far fetched. But this is what you want to see if you're Oklahoma. This is not a finished product because again, they definitely have room to grow with finding that ground game. The offensive line needs to continue to get better and show that they could win a shootout style game. SEC play is going to define that. But if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're going to be going into that opener against Auburn in the Jackson Arnold reunion game. You're going to be going into there feeling very good as long as John Mateer is upright.
Yeah, and I mean, especially given what Auburn was able to do and what the strength of Oklahoma is, it's like, hey, bring that in here. And I'll say this too, these are two teams that have found success in the basketball court as well. So maybe these fans can kind of understand this. I feel like we're really starting to get to that equilibrium where college basketball was for a while, where it's like, hey, if you bring in the 5-star player, you got to play him immediately, right? Bryce Underwood, Arch Manning, Jackson Arnold, I've seen that over and over again. Or, you start to have some of these like veteran teams that we've seen in the tournament over the last couple of years. And that's what Mateer is. And I think you make a great point there where it goes, hey, like he's kind of like the dad of the offense where it's like, okay, if I don't like this look, I'm turning this car around. I'm taking it off of my legs. I'm not going to look around and go, what do I do? What do I do? And take a sack or throw the ball to where nobody is. I'm going to take over it because I'm a grown man. I got a LinkedIn bio. We're going to figure this out. And I think that like from a Venable's standpoint, it's like, yeah, you bring in the young OC, but bringing in that quarterback that's been around. And we talked about this in the preview, but it truly was correct. Like there's nothing else to say really, which is that, having that veteran presence when we've seen these, Duke teams and these Kansas teams and these Kentucky teams over the years get upset by these veteran, more like kind of mid-major teams. Not saying that Oklahoma's mid-major because they have talent, but blending those two things together, blending the talent and the experience when the kind of rage is, oh, the shiny new thing, the Arch Manning, this guy's the future of everything. Well, Jean Mateer is the present, and that's when we play the game, is in the present.
It's all going to be defined in a lot of ways by what he does against Texas.
Yep.
That's legacy defining stuff. If you're an Oklahoma quarterback, he
Mm-hmm.
knew that when he agreed to come to Norman. They are very likely going to be 5-0 if they can beat Auburn. If they can beat Auburn, which I shouldn't say very likely to be 5-0. They have the weird trip to Temple coming up. Yeah, that's right.
The good
Trip to
news is you
Temple.
got Auburn at home. The bad news is you're going to Philadelphia, son.
Yeah, right. And you got Kent State as well, which
Mm-hmm.
dub 5-0 going into Texas is very, very realistic. And being a matchup of top 10 teams, I think is in play. Post year one, by the way, Brent Venables is 3-3 against top 15 teams, and in the 3 wins that he's had, his defense allowed just 3 touchdowns. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Food for thought. That's something worth remembering if you're going to be if you can get to that 9-3, 10-2 place where all of a sudden you're getting into the playoff. That makes you a very difficult out and doesn't make it feel like you have the ceiling in the way that others do. Just something to remember.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Arizona State, Mississippi State. How about Jeff Lebby, man? How about Jeff Lebby?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a person on the planet? You talk about Florida fans. Would any Florida fan have said that USF is going to be part of that gauntlet in the first half of the year? Was there a person on the planet who thought that Mississippi State would win that game when Arizona State was on the goal line, 2 minutes left, having already overcome the 17-0 deficit? Game is tied at that point. I didn't look at the win probability of this one, but I just know the vibe probability was not favoring Mississippi State whatsoever. Nobody was thinking that they're winning in that moment. This is why we can't have nice things. The first half was fun. We'll always remember that. Arizona State's the better team. They're going to come in and find a way to just survive Stark Vegas. They're going to find a way. And then, buddy, they didn't, because that goal line stand that they had to force the field goal and then the Brendan Thompson touchdown, man, that dude can hit the Jets. I know we're talking about how Oklahoma got really, really banged up last year at receiver. Brendan Thompson kind of looks like a dude for Mississippi State and confused that Arizona State defense just enough. Maybe the best moment that Mississippi State has had. You know what? I shouldn't say maybe. Definitely the best moment Mississippi State football has had post Mike Leach death. Has to be.
Yeah.
Right? Even better than the bowl game, because you're getting to do that in front of your home fans and all that. I thought that was stunning. Could not believe that happened in that moment. against that Arizona State team that I thought would be able to run away with it. But yeah, it turns out the size of the cowbell makes a difference. Maybe.
You know what's funny? Like, I hate to do like the Skip Bayless and be like, "Oh, did that matter?" But like the response that we got like from the Mississippi State fans took that so personally that they thought that they were just gonna
They were
walk.
louder, Will. They were louder. You can't tell me that they weren't. They were louder having seen that clip. They're like,
Mhm.
I am going to make sure that I'm going to clang this sucker so hard. And they're going to make sure that they know that these little tiny, teeny cowbells that they were doing in practice are nothing like the real experience at Davis Wade
It
Stadium.
was rocking, man. And like having been to a couple of those games, like when Mississippi State was really good, with Dak and all that, like it is actually like a pretty they do the most with the space they have, kind of like what I was talking about with talent. And it's so crazy because in that goal line sequence, I feel like Oklahoma was like kind of driving down the field to put a nail in the coffin. And I kept kind of checking in on that game. It was like on my other TV. It felt like Arizona State was at the goal line for like 30 minutes. Like it was
Yes.
like they were, and I just kept kind of mentally, it was like they're going to score here and then we're going to start doing the math. So let me just go back over here and watch this
Levy
game.
was like living in the end zone
Yeah.
during that
Yeah.
whole sequence. Every time they would show the sideline, and Levy's just, I'm like, how is he already out on the field that far out there? And this is gonna be going on for 20 minutes. What's
The
going
Kim
on?
Mulkey playbook, you just get in there and cover,
Yeah.
play cover 4 back there, just until they stop you. And so, yeah, like honestly, credit to them because we've seen both of these teams being offensive teams. The way that Mississippi State was able to get up early, and then they got a little bit tight and everything. But I mean, you gotta say it, right? Heck of a play at the end, but what were they thinking on the defensive coverage to bring the nickel in? From Arizona State standpoint, it's like solo coverage against that receiver at that point in this game. And yeah, I mean, State looked confident for the whole game. Obviously, there was a lull there, like we talked about. But if you're going to give a guy like Levy, quarterback that's been around, that type of opportunity, it was like a barbecue chicken as soon as that ball went up.
Levitt, yeah. Oh, you're saying Levy with with the Blake shape.
Blake Shapen, yeah.
Yeah. I was stunned that the coverage resulted in that in that miscommunication, which was everything. And then it was just off to the races from that point. And he'd already done that in the game. It wasn't like they were just, they caught him at a weird time. You had already seen him, what it looks like to have Brennan Thompson get single coverage. And that dude just absolutely flies. I was most impressed with the Mississippi State defense, Will, because for roughly the first 29 minutes of the game, pretty sure Sam Levitt had 7 passing yards or something ridiculous
he
like
looked
that.
bad, man. And that was the thing that we were the most
Ooh.
confident about was him and the receiver was like they have that chemistry coming into the year. I feel like they were hearing cowbells like Metallica in the back of their helmets.
Sam Levitt was considered one of the 10 best quarterbacks in college football. And Mississippi State last year, I don't know if there were 10 defenses in college football that were worse than them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's not like they had a huge transfer portal class or something like that. And they totally changed things up. They kind of just ran it back and hoped that a second year in the system was going to benefit Coleman Hutzler and it was going to be a better unit. And I was really skeptical of that going into this game. And I'm like, look, Jordan Tyson's going to get his. And he was good in this game. He did have a pretty costly drop in a key spot where he looked like he was turning up field for a first down. But Mississippi State's defense, man, they played out of their hair for the first half of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who are these guys? Because they're not exactly loaded with household names, Will. Like read these names. Like Mike Ricciardi, Zach Borenstein, John Bakun. Those aren't actually guys those are actually guys from my senior high school baseball team. But you believed it, right? You believed it.
I was looking up another roster, like, when am I going to get this as I see? That's hilarious, actually.
But that's the thing is like they don't even have a Stone Blanton who's been around in the SEC. Like Stone, like where are these guys coming from? And to
Calvin
me,
Dinkins with a K.
Yeah. I could have really kept going with that one. Zach Borenstein played AAA baseball. He was a stud. He played for Team Israel in the World Baseball Classic. He was awesome. But to have that type of performance was pretty stunning. And they fed off that energy with the crowd. I don't know that all of a sudden this unit has things figured out, but they showed they actually have a pass rush. They're still obviously looking for their first SEC win of the Levy era. So I don't want to like get ahead of myself or anything like that. But, they now look like they have a really good shot of being 4-0 and hosting Tennessee. Perhaps even as a top 25 team. They just beat the Big 12 champs from last year.
Look,
who were
guys,
top
state
3
of
in
the
the
conference.
country.
Mississippi
They were
State
top 3 in
had
the country in returning production, Will.
State of the conference. Mississippi State is yet to get their first SEC win under Levy, yet they just beat the best team in the Big 12. So watch
Dude.
out.
Brett Yormark was watching football on Saturday going, one bid league? No, no. I spent all off season talking about we're not a one bid league. We're not a one big league.
That was a great supervillain voice for him. That's great. That sounds actually
Yeah.
pretty accurate.
Yikes, Big 12. Not exactly great. But college football is about moments, right? It is. It is about appreciating a moment and feeling like you're taking a next step and feeling like whatever sort of previous era of crap is in the rearview mirror. That's
Yep.
such an important sense of optimism with a sport that plays one game a week and feeling like you can walk around town and there's a different sort of buzz in the air and it's not the end of September and you're going, man, are we going to win one SEC game this year? I don't know how many games Mississippi State is going to win in conference play, and I won't sit here and pretend like that's an ultimate turn the corner game. Lord knows we've been fooled by games like that in the past. Even 2 years ago when they won that game against Arizona, ironically enough, which was their last power conference win at home, it wasn't a turn the corner game. It was, oh, that's really their only quality win of the year, and this is going to be one and done for Zach Arnett. So like these things can be just for a day and they can be just a moment in time. But here's what I love about college football, Will. On college game day, they're doing the picks, and McAfee basically says Luke Kromenhoek, the backup that they got from Florida State, who was a very decorated recruit, that he should probably be starting if he's as talented as people say.
We should retire
And
that take. That take is so lazy, and every time I hear it, I'm just like, okay, man, you're in practice
experience
every day.
matters.
You know what?
Experience matters.
Yeah.
And less than 12 hours later, Will, Mississippi State fans storm the field. They carry the goalposts, and Blake Shapen is mobbed. And it's this scene that Blake Shapen's never going to forget that for the rest of his life. And I don't know if he heard what Pat McAfee said on game day, basically saying, hey, guy's not as talented. He shouldn't be starting. But that guy is forever going to have that moment because he was out for almost all of last year after getting hurt in the Florida game. And he's experienced what this has been like to just take it on the chin in conference play at the start of a new era. And for him to get that moment, for this program to get that moment on Saturday night, it's why I love this silly sport. And I think if you were searching for what are going to be the things we talk about in week 2, that right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a moment of, it's so rare, I feel, to truly have a moment of like conference pride. But I feel like a lot of people, except for Ole Miss fans, obviously, but I mean, hey, you guys got your own stuff to worry about after Saturday. But everybody was like, man, how about that? Like, no attachment to Arizona State, just excited for Levy and the fact that, they've been through the grind. They've been through, you talked about the tragic death of Mike Leach, the tragic situation they were in afterward, where they didn't, they kind of had to move Arnett into his place. Not that they had to, but it felt like the right thing to do. Arnett was one and done, and it just kind of feels like, when they brought Leach in, it was like, okay, wow, we've got kind of our guy. We've got a guy that loves Mississippi. He's actually a great fit here. And then everything since then has just felt like a bad dream almost. And it's like, man, like just to have this one Saturday in Starkville, right? I mean, imagine like, if you had started at Mississippi State and you're a junior, how many of those days have you had?
How much did that feel like 2010s Mississippi State? That atmosphere felt like it was one of the most hostile in college football. And it's just, you might survive. You might get out of here with a win if you're 2017 Alabama, but it's not going to be fun. And you're going to have to play for 60 minutes and your head's going to be hurting by the time that you leave the stadium. And those fans don't care about what the record is. They want to make sure that you are having a miserable time here.
Yep.
That's what it felt like.
Yep.
And it's been a while since we've really said that about Mississippi State. Doesn't mean that they're dead set to get back to it, but you have to close out games like that for that to continue.
Yeah, 100%. That was exactly, what I thought of. I went to go see, I think it was 09 with Chad Jones versus Boobie Dixon. Down there was a goal line stand.
What names?
And I remember just being like, the dreadlocks of doom. I just remember being like, oh my God. And like, getting out of that and feeling like I had just been to a metal show. And like, cause your ears are ringing and you're just like so mad about it. Cause you're just like, how could y'all just turn it, please? Like, I'm sure you guys have work tomorrow. But yeah, I think that, that's the beautiful thing about football in the Southeast is that, we can all pretend like, oh, this doesn't really matter. It's just whatever. But when your team is good, it affects your mood, man. And it affects like how you kind of carry yourself. And it's a sense of pride. And especially to have a team like Arizona State come in as the favorite, which is so rare in the history of this conference, to have an out West team travel to Starkville And like I said, it's a measuring stick for Levy against Dillingham, who felt like we talked about, who he had, the world on a string, and he beat the timelines and everything. With Levy, it's kind of not how do you like me now because he's so young and it's so early and it's not an SEC game, but it's like
I would agree.
you made a solid decision here, Mississippi State. I'm not going to embarrass you, you know?
They have matched last year's win total.
There you go.
It
Hey,
is.
before we get out of here, you predicted one SEC win, over under one SEC win for this new Mississippi State squad.
I'm going to say they get 2. I'm going to say they get at least 2.
There you go.
I think it's in play.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of a sudden now, when you win a game like that, you can start talking about, hey, bowl possibilities.
Right, we're pushing for a bowl. We got something to play for, not just rivalry. I feel it. Yep.
Yeah, very much on the table. All right, Kansas, Mizzou. This game ruled.
This game was awesome.
Ruled. Oh my God, Will, I love this game. 2 electric quarterbacks, 2 fan bases that so clearly hated each other. Apologies for saying it felt more like a basketball rivalry than a football rivalry. Hand up, my bad. Y'all deserve better. Y'all showed better. A Mizzou fan wasted an opportunity to kick for $25,000 so he could kick it at the Kansas sideline.
An amputee? What an absolute king. Like, this is, again, you belong in the SEC, son. This is the type of hatred that I admire. This is haterade to the max.
And look, I'll admit, having not seen this rivalry in 14 years, first time they played since 2011, you forget that pent up hatred, what that's like. But man, it was great to see it play out. And it was a fun type of game that I was hoping these 2 teams would play like, because it felt frenetic, chaotic, just momentum swings, huge plays. Mizzou ultimately has its biggest comeback win in 9 years, shake off a 21-6 start, which was Mizzou's largest home deficit in 4 years since October 2021 against A&M. Yeah, which is pretty wild to think of.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, dang, they don't really fall behind by 2 touchdowns at home. It's just not something that they've done.
It's a lot of clinching for Mizzou. It's like they lose some
Boston
of the games,
College game,
but they're all at the end.
Yeah, you're right. Like, the one break against LSU isn't going to go their
Mm-hmm.
way, or maybe we're going to be able to make a field goal and survive Vandy or something. But yeah, just getting punched in the mouth at home does not happen. And all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, this could be shaping up to be a very significant fall off the face of the earth type game for Mizzou if this gets out of hand. And look, I know that it's Kansas, but Mizzou is very, very intriguing with that version of Bo Pribula.
Mm-hmm.
Very intriguing. I never worry about Mizzou's ability to run the football. It doesn't mean that they've always done that at the absolute highest level during the Drinkwitz era, but more times than not, they certainly have. Roberts put it away. Hardy was great too. And I'm just getting to the place now where I also trust Corey Batoon to lead that defense, which I would argue was just fine on Saturday when you take away the scoop and score and you realize, all right, 24 points you allowed to a year 6 quarterback, 226 yards of total offense. Like, you'll take that.
Amazing against the run. And like I said, we got vintage Jalen Daniels. That boy has shades of Jaden Daniels at Mizzou. There were moments in that game where it was like you could tackle him, he's going to throw the ball up and somebody's going to catch it. And that's always so scary to play with. So, yeah, I mean, it's weird that they came back and I don't call it a dominant win, but they were certainly the better team kind of as the game went on.
Did Kansas even touch the football in the second quarter? I don't know. It didn't feel like it. I think they had 4 plays in the second quarter or something like that. It was crazy. And that's after you fall behind early and you don't have the crowd feeling as good as they did at the start, where it looked like Mizzou was going to come out and just light up that Kansas defense for 4 quarters. And they ended up doing that. But it was definitely a herky-jerky game to start off. And I thought with Pribula, it was really noticeable how much they trusted him. Way more than any extended quarterback battle would have suggested, because they went for it on 4th down 5 times and they converted 4 of them. And there were high-risk throws to the very underrated Kevin Coleman Jr. Some of the throws that Pribula was making to him, I was like, dang, these guys look like they've been playing together for 3 years. They are very much in sync with one another. And then Brett Norfleet is establishing himself as one of the better tight ends in the SEC. Maybe he's going to end up being one of the better tight ends in college football, somebody that was immensely talented coming up, and they've been wanting him to be able to stay healthy and become a bigger fixture in the offense. And he is certainly looking the part.
That
He had
boy
the
Norfleet
go-ahead
had 2
touchdown.
touchdowns, and they were my second and third favorite plays he made in that game because he opened up the game with a hurdle and then a shoulder lower that was just like, oh my God, I owe you an apology, Norfleet. I was not familiar with your game.
Adrenaline levels through the roof for
Mhm.
that guy. Yeah. That throw that Prbula had to him where the timing was perfect. I think it was a linebacker that was converging on him in the middle of the end zone, and he's got to fit it through a really, really tight window in the spot. I believe it was 3rd and goal as well. I think it was 3rd and goal from the 11, and he just fits it through with zip on it, with confidence. I really was impressed. I was impressed with so many different elements of this Mizzou offense. And I know last year Kirby Moore took a lot of heat for the play calling, and a lot of people felt like it held Mizzou's offense back in year 2 when they had all that star power. This year, I love the balance that Mizzou has. Mizzou can do anything. Mizzou did the ball 39 times in this game,
Mhm.
and they ran the ball for their backs had what, like 250? They had like a 261-3 rushing yard advantage
Yeah, you
in
know
this
what?
game.
Maybe some of my fault is I just like, I'm some guy and I don't, take this maybe as seriously as I should sometimes. 'Cause I'm like, oh, I'm just Will, like whatever. And then I hear evidence like, okay, Dabo reads your articles and stuff, and I'm just gonna pretend like Drink has been listening to the pod because they did exactly what we hoped they would in this game. As far as Pabula, 30 of 39, 334 yards, and on the ground, 2 different running backs over
And
100
slid.
yards.
He slid when he had a slide in this game and protected himself so much better,
Yes.
with the exception of that fumble.
Yes, and like early, it was looking like he was going to be a little bit more risky, and then as they calmed down, it was like this is exactly what we want to see out of this offense. Because obviously, Pabula can be a little bit of that herky jerky dual threat guy, but the way that he's able to freeze defenders with his legs is actually the skill set here. I didn't even know he was able to do that at such a high level. And some of these big throws that went down as passing yardage started off as the threat of a run, where the linebackers start coming down and the safeties start crashing down, and then suddenly, as someone's in his face, he chucks it up, and there's this beautiful catch. How many times did we see that yesterday? It felt like 5 or 6.
A lot, a lot. I'm looking at the early returns of this Mizzou transfer portal class, and it's remarkable. Josiah Trotter is going to be a first team all SEC guy at
Mhm.
season's end. I am all in on that. He is Nick Bolton reincarnated in this defense. He is like that. That's what it feels like watching him play. And I'm looking at some of the guys that they got on offense now with Hardy, with being able to bring in Coleman from Mississippi State, which was such a slept on move. And then obviously Prbula. Their evaluation of him was something we questioned, and I think was fair to question. But when you see it play out like this, and you see him throw the ball 39 times in a game, never had more than 13 passing attempts in a game at Penn State. Obviously, we knew that his role was so different. But so many of those spots that he was in, I was thinking as I'm watching this game, he's never had to do this before. He's never had to do this before. Oh, he's being asked to do this. Oh, okay, I guess he was asked to do this like a little bit at Wisconsin, but this is entirely different with the juice going into a big time rivalry game like this. And he is QB1, and so many people will base their opinion of him on this performance. And I really liked it. I did. And Will, it's too early to ask this question, but I am going to cackle if I get to ask it in December. So let's just throw it out there now.
Okay.
Are we sure Penn State picked the right quarterback? Are we sure?
You know what's funny?
I'm half joking. I'm half joking, Penn State fans. Chill.
The thing is, quick aside on that. I've looked through Penn State's like playbook a couple of times, like in NCAA or whatever, and you look at the hire that they made at their OC, and it's like this
Andy
guy.
Kotelnicki.
Yeah, it's like
Andy Kotelnicki was from Kansas.
Yes, and it's this guy who you've seen take some of these shots like with Kansas, and it's like almost a perfect hire. And then you see how he's utilized at Penn State. It's like this is James Franklin just putting the cap on this guy. And then one quick note on Prbula, I realized this in the preview, didn't feel like going into it there. He's from York, PA. That's where John's from. That's like the south of Pennsylvania, like the southeast of Pennsylvania culturally. That's where York Barbell is. That's near Hershey, Pennsylvania. I think that's gonna be my nickname for him, York Barbell, because boy, they are so tough in the middle of PA like that, and he perfectly just represents that.
He's got some Will Levis vibes, man.
Mm-hmm.
He does. He's got some 2021 Will Levis vibes. And if that's the type of player that Mizzou's getting, man, that's a huge win. That'd be a huge, huge win. Doesn't mean that it's going to be like that against better defenses. We could look back on Kansas and go, hey, this ended up being one of the worst defenses in the country, and it was a lot harder for Bo Pribula in SEC play. But, I did find it interesting. Game day, and I don't mean, not everything's based on game day, and I realize I've already referenced that with the Luke Kromenhoek thing, but they made their picks for Kansas and Mizzou, and it was split, kind of understandably so. Saban pronounced his name wrong, and then Herbstreit pronounced his name wrong.
Wow. The SEC guy and the Big Ten guy, that's rough.
I get it. There are a ton of names. It's very hard. I've probably mispronounced names on this podcast. I totally get it. How long, though, do I wonder, will it take Bo Pribula to be a household name in college football? If he plays like that, just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying. The runway is there with that schedule that we talked about, and how they don't have a road game until week 8. And, they've got this game coming up against South Carolina that a lot of people will be watching. But, if he outperforms Lenore Sellers against a South Carolina team that very much is still figuring things out on the offensive side of the ball, they have not been the offensive juggernaut that they hoped they would be to start the season. They've been buoyed by special teams touchdowns. I like that verb, buoyed. But if Bo Pribula outplays Lenore Sellers, that will change things. And then all of a sudden we'll be like, whoa, this is scary what Mizzou has for this day on this very fun Saturday of awesome border war, rivalry renewed, just rivalry vibes galore. He looked darn good.
I mean, if he continues to outplay Lenore Sellers, honestly, because through a couple of games, I feel like it's been a clear advantage to Bo. And I'll say this before we get out of here. There was a period of time, maybe when Alabama and Georgia were on top of the sport and everything, where people had the ability to be elitist, right? Well, looking here at the modern SEC, if you don't like drink, you hate football, because this dude is so fun. The brand of football they play at Mizzou, the way they get after the passer, the way they play offense is so fun to watch, and it's so good to have them in the conference that I'm so sick of people being like, drink is corny, da 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 da. And we can make fun of it when he loses, when he does the fake blanket stuff. I get all that. I'm there. Let's slander the guy when he does corny stuff that doesn't work. But when it comes on a day-to-day basis, acting like he's some clown, this has been one of the most consistent winning head coaches in the SEC since he's got there. And again, he did the adapt or die thing. There were some lulls there. I get that. But that's the Southeastern Conference. How many coaches haven't had that? Hall of Famers, right? So at the end of the day, I feel like Mizzou is a joy to watch. And there's always going to be something. They keep you watching. It's like Lane Kiffin said, grab your popcorn. So that's what I appreciate out of a head coach. And Drake has my attention.
I will continue to say the 7.5 regular season over-under was so disrespectful to Mizzou. So disrespectful. Give me the over on that all day.
Easy.
All right, Ole Miss, Kentucky. For a while, for a good minute on Saturday, this felt like another Toby Keith win for Mark Stoops against Lane Kiffin. It did. And Austin Simmons looked rattled in his first road start. 2 first quarter picks again. Did that last week too. Ironic that the guy who was very heralded for his poise that he showed coming into that Georgia game in the first quarter and just having ice water in his veins in that moment has since, as a starter in his first 2 career starts, looked very shaky to start off these games. But a few things happened after that. One was that Simmons settled in. Did get banged up late on that awkward hit, but reading the comments from Michael Katz, it looks like he avoided anything major. They expect him to be okay from it, but something to kind of file away. Another thing was that Kewan Lacey provided an element that Ole Miss did not have in this game last year. It did not. And that is a bell cow back who can put a game away. He already looks like a really nice pickup from Mizzou. Yeah, from Mizzou.
How about that?
Yeah, go figure. 28 carries in this one. No other Ole Miss back had more than 3.
Not Logan Diggs. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They're saving him for any day.
I hope the best for Logan Diggs. He's trailing in this backfield. They've made that very, very clear from the jump. One other thing happened. Zach Calzada.
That sure did happen, didn't it?
I know he hurt his shoulder late.
That's not why.
I just haven't and still don't get what the point was of Zach Calzada in a Kentucky uniform. And you could tell me, Mark Stoops was on the hot seat. He wanted an experienced quarterback. I still will just
I don't think Mark
that
Stoops
is
cares
flawed
what
logic.
anyone thinks of him. That's the other thing. It's like if we're gonna do Mark Stoops scared of the hot seat, it's like, what about everything else he does?
How motivated is he?
Right.
Some are wondering. It sounded afterward like Cutter Boley is going to get a chance next week against Eastern Michigan, regardless of Calzada's health. Good, because Zach Calzada did not magically become a reliable SEC quarterback after 2 years in Incarnate Word. And we just praised the evaluation that Mizzou had with Bo Perbula. And I am sitting here questioning what in the world told this Kentucky staff that Zach Calzada was going to be the answer, because it's so obvious it's not. It's maddening to watch, and it's a shame because Kentucky had juice on defense. They have a really nice 1-2 punch in the backfield that they now have with Dowdle and McGowan, and you're kind of going like, okay, this Kentucky team actually has more strengths than last year's, and maybe they're going to end up having more strengths than they did even 2 years ago when it was a bit of a mess with Devin Leary and a team that still ended up winning 7 games. But it feels like Stoops just punted on quarterback, and he just hoped that he
Great
could
word. It
find
feels
someone
like
who could
every time
manage a
the
game.
quarterback had a ball, there was a punt right behind
Oh
it.
my god, it felt like arm punts.
Yep.
Like I the problem and you could almost look into Stoops' mindset. And I'm not talking about what he says publicly or, take that for what it is at this point. You can look into Stoops' thought process and go, did he just tell himself, get me a game manager and I'll do this the way that I did in the late 2010s. Give me a Terry Wilson type guy and I'll be okay. The
Taylor
difference
Wilson
is
is
those
not the
guys.
blueprint to winning football. Like I can't even give credence to that because how did you even do that when you did it?
I'm a neighbor Terry respecter. I
Mhm.
am like love the guy. He's like I love talking to that guy, and I developed a certain appreciation for him and what he did for that 2018 Kentucky team. But those guys could run. Calzada can run a little bit, but you're not changing unless you drastically change your offense and the way that you want to run it. Which I'm not banking on Bush Hamden to be able to adapt at this point. I'm just
Mhm.
not. I, he's not changing a game with his legs. So what are you really doing? What are you really doing at this point to have him out there instead of Cutter Boley? I don't get it, and I get it. It's very popular because Cutter Boley's the local 4-star kid. He's from Lexington, and fans obviously want to see him in the game. But what in your evaluation said we can't build around that? We need a guy that can come in and be good for us from the jump. And then when he's ready, we'll bring him in. Just let him have those reps from the jump, man. You set yourself back by doing this. And it's just so maddening because that should have been a nice opportunity for Cutter Boley to be able to get experience against an SEC defense, a very new look SEC defense. Instead, you got Zach Calzada out there. For what? Why?
Man, it's like, and Zach Gauss, I mean, he's gonna be 25 in November. Like again, like we
Ugh.
know who he is, right? But at least we've seen him be a guy who can win a big game. You talk about
He won one big game. He won one.
right, right. But I'm saying, man, like I was never really out on Leary, and you look at Key and Barry Brown, and it's not like those guys are trash. So like at some point, you got to look internally and be like, hey, like this place might be the problem. Like it might be that we get all these talented guys in because even Key and Brown were awesome when they were in Kentucky, and the slander on them was the drops. Well, I mean, when your offense is out of sync, it's easy to drop the football, right? And so, point being, like, it's just hard to say okay, devil's advocate. I could see why you bring in a guy like Calzada for the stability. That's fine. But at the same time, when the offense does look exactly the same, how do you fix that, right? It's almost like a quarterback, like if they brought in Bo Perbula, he would be trash. I just have zero
Yeah.
faith in them to get whatever they have and turn it into a winning formula outside of the running backs. And that's kind of the funny thing is that even when their offensive line has struggled, even when their quarterbacks have struggled, even when their wide receivers have struggled, they've found a way to run the ball. And that just shows like what their priorities are because they've found a way, maybe not like this, but they have always kind of had some way to at least lean forward. And I think that's what happens when you prioritize kind of old school football. And the defense, to your point, I think looked great. I mean, I think that Austin Simmons, what a unique player, man. I can't wait to see more out of him. But could argue he was kind of thinking a little bit too much. He was maybe in his own head, but
A
they
little
were
bit.
making some plays on defense. But that being said, just what a prime opportunity wasted for Stoops troops.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the MO. You play competitively with a team like that at home, and then ultimately you're not going to do the things that you need to do down the stretch. And meanwhile, Ole Miss, critical point in that game was that 4th and 1. You're in your own territory. Austin Simmons is in his first career road start. He's already thrown 2 picks, and if you don't pick up this 4th down, if he makes an off-target throw, if he's not in the right headspace, you could be all of a sudden looking up at a 3-score deficit in a hurry and not know what hit you. And you have that crowd rocking, and you're thinking this is the same thing as it was last year. And instead, they pick up that 1st down, and then it's kind of off to the races after that. And I just thought the confidence that Kiffin showed in Austin Simmons, and I think it was Michael Katz who had the quote about like how people look at Austin Simmons and they see the baseball mentality with him, where like they see the pitcher mindset
Mhm.
of he can have a crooked inning that he allows, and he's able to bounce back from that. And I do think that we're seeing that play out a little bit, especially with how many yards he put up, obviously against Georgia State last week. But for him to not take himself out of that game, still looked really poised. Even the touchdown run showed some really nice patience to be able to do that at this stage of his career, when I think he could have pressed, got to the edge a little bit too quickly and not let the play develop. But yeah, it's been a mixed bag with Austin Simmons. It's definitely been a mixed bag. Somebody that I liked is a Heisman long shot. Somebody that I said I think will be an all SEC quarterback at season's end has not had the desired start, but he's dealt with that adversity early. And there have been moments in which you've kind of wondered, what's it going to look like for this Ole Miss quarterback when they hit adversity? Even Jackson Dart, as he's becoming a 1st-round pick, we still had those moments where he wondered. Austin Simmons just maybe looking a little bit more 2020 Matt Corral-ish than I
Okay.
thought, with some of these grenade interceptions. And Corral was in year 1 in the system, Austin
Mhm.
Simmons year 3 in the system. So that's why we weren't making those comps to start. But we're kind of seeing it play out. I think better days are ahead, better starts rather are ahead for Austin Simmons.
Yeah, I wonder, like, so I don't want to get too hung up on this because I don't want to turn into our guy who was at Jake Bentley at South Carolina that like missed his prom or whatever. But
Oh, wait, he did? I never heard that at
right.
all.
But I
Yeah.
didn't realize how, like, Jason Tatum-ishly 19, Austin Simmons, like, I didn't realize how many steps he had skipped. Like, he has skipped, like, the most steps of any player I've ever
Oh,
seen
yeah.
to be here. Like, it's actually kind of a
Learn how to
shocking
drive at
point.
Ole Miss. Learn how to drive
Yeah.
at college. Yeah.
Like, it's crazy that he is 19, and so, like, part of that you gotta kinda factor in, not to make excuses for the guy, but if you have all these measurables that you're, like, acing these standardized tests and everything, and yet you can't quite get it, I think it's in there. I think that's what Lane Kiffin sees, and to your point, I think it just takes a couple of years in a system like that, and he's had a couple of years, but it's a little bit different when you're imagining it, and that's why I say he might have a little bit of the Peyton Manning in him, where he overanalyzes, and it's like he just wills the ball to where he wants it to go versus okay, roll with the punches. Talk about the difference in like a John Mateer, where it's like, hey, sometimes football is just weird. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And when the game doesn't make sense, realizing it's not, everything in life being this accelerated track. Some of those, like, it's almost like gifted kid mentality, where it's like, I envision my life going this way. And when it doesn't, I get scared. And so I think getting those reps early where you have to come back from the first quarter interceptions could be really helpful for him. But the more I learn about him, like I said, the more I'm just intrigued by him. Maybe not early, but I think it won some really big games at Ole Miss, and that's what they missed. You talked about the Georgia game; it's already kind of gotten credit for one of those. So I still, at 19, it's hard to say that he's had this long career.
If Austin Simmons' stock is low right now, I'll buy.
Right? Exactly. We're
I'll
aligned
happily
there.
buy.
Yeah.
The surroundings are still really, really good,
Hmm.
and still like the potential. And for Lane, the only goal was surviving Saturday, getting out of there with a win, and making sure it wasn't going to be this cloud that hangs over you for the rest of the season.
Hmm.
All right, well, last one. Man, sorry, we got Claire is just waking up from a nap, so apologies. Don't give us a 1-star review if you hear Claire in the background. We do record directly to align with her nap schedule.
Hmm.
Just saying. Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech. My God, Diego Pavia is clearing out stadiums now.
Yep.
Check that. You know what? Vandy is clearing out stadiums, because that was not just the Diego Pavia show. And if you watch that game, you know exactly where I'm going with this. That was a 20-10 Virginia Tech lead at the midway point of nearly the midway point of the third quarter. I think it was 8 minutes left in the third quarter. And Vandy then had the home fans at Lane Stadium heading to the exits in the middle of the fourth quarter.
Hmm.
34 unanswered points to close this game. And I know that Pavia is the straw that stirs the drink. If we bring up Vandy, we talk about Pavia. Those two go hand in hand, obviously. He deserves credit for bringing just a new mindset to this team, okay? But Vandy bullied Virginia Tech in the trenches, bullied them, took their will to win right from them.
Mm-hmm.
And they ran the ball right down their throat. They basically said, we're going to force you to play for 60 minutes because we don't think you can. And you know what? They were right. That team was done. Virginia Tech was the holes that they were allowing in the ground game and how apathetic they looked at the end of that game. You know, we talked about what it was going to look like facing Diego Pavia and Vandy 6 days after having to face Lenore Sellers. And it wasn't going to surprise me if they struggled to do things well down the stretch. I didn't think they would collapse like that. But my God, that was a beatdown in the second half. And Vandy is, look, Dari said it. I've been saying this for a while as well. That is not your older brother's Vandy. Okay. This is a new Vandy. And even if Virginia Tech goes 4-8 this year and it's just a disastrous season, you can still look back on a game like that and go, whoa, you have to have a different type of gear to flip something like that in a visiting stadium at the power conference level.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it was like this big, 10-point lead at halftime. And to me, it just never felt safe, especially with the way the half kind of like ended and everything, kind of a big stand by Vandy. And like that's the thing. Like it is too simple to say, oh, it's Diego Pavia, because a lot of those guys in the back end, I mean, that's fundamentally where like this team, this head coach kind of make their hay. Sorry guy, Sea Snake, CJ Hurd getting involved. Nick Rinaldi also.
He had a big hit in this
Yeah,
game too
he did.
on a pressure. Yeah.
Nick Rinaldi, I'm sure no relation to Tom, but Boy Big,
Maybe.
it's kind of random guys, right? Like not random guys. Like we obviously have shouted him out, but it's the fact that that's kind of what you could count on from Vandy, and the fact that they had been in these high scoring games in their upsets is not exactly like what their staff would have wanted. They fundamentally want to be a defensive team, I think, and that's why they're kind of pounding the air out of the football with Pavia. But when you don't have like 5-star talent in the SEC, you just end up getting scored on. And I think we just saw, this team that has gone through the grind of a successful SEC season at Vanderbilt just start to lean on VT. And VT obviously came out hot. They had some good plays. I think you would kind of hit the Kyron Drone scouting report on the head there, where it's like, yeah, like the more freedom you give him, the more time you give him, the more he starts to kind of like unravel. And I think Vandy did that to him. I think they made him show all of his good stuff early and they adjusted. And so, yeah, it was weird because, you can't really go through and be like, oh my God, dominant game by one player. But that's exactly what Vandy wants to be,
Should I start naming players from my high school baseball team and see if you think that they're part of the Vandy defense?
That's the thing about the Vandy defense. These guys are all geniuses too. They're special in another way. Yeah.
Sure. Credit Stephen Gregory because he takes over that role as defensive coordinator after Clark Lee was in that role. He named himself as defensive coordinator last year. And I was wondering how that transition was going to go this year with Clark Lee saying, all right, you know what? I'm going to step back into more of the CEO head coach type role.
Mm-hmm.
And that defense played with its hair on fire. Steve Adazio was on the call for ACC.
He sure was.
And I didn't realize it was Steve Adazio at first. But at one point in this game, when it was Virginia Tech was up 17-10 or something like that, and he said something to the effect of this isn't over. Vandy's going to keep competing, almost as if he was trying to tell us, "Hey guys, doing the announcer thing where he's trying to sell us a game.
Yeah,
don't turn it off. I like Virginia Tech. Yeah, they might run away with it, but Vandy's going to keep competing." And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is he talking about? What is he looking at right now that would because I don't think that they were shutting down what Vandy was doing offensively. And there was enough misdirection. Tim Beck, I think, has done a whale of a job in his year plus in Nashville with the concepts that they draw up. You got Diego Pavia out there as a lead blocker on some of this misdirection stuff that they're doing. Like they get Stowers involved. Junior Sherrill's been great. Like they're leaning on the running game more than they have. I was really, really impressed. And I think Vandy deserves a lot of credit for that. And I'm assuming that somewhere the Pavia brothers watched this, kind of like the Bash brothers in D2 Mighty Ducks after they got ejected. Anything less would be a disappointment. That's the only thing I could picture with the Pavia brothers watching this game. And I don't know who needs to hear this, Will. But one, Brent Pry had the most I just got fired face that I've seen in recent memory. Oh man, some body language there that was you could have read that one from space. This guy knows he's canned. He'll end up getting a defensive coordinator job or something like that, or James Franklin will hire him to be a defensive analyst. Then he'll get another power conference defensive coordinator job. Like Brent Pry will be just fine, but That guy knew, oh boy, I'm not going to survive this. This is ultimately going to be the beginning of my end here. And two, Vandy is not in for some massive regression the way that some might have assumed. It doesn't mean that they get back to 7 wins, but that is not going to be a fun team for South Carolina to face after they played with their food a little bit the last 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Did I misremember? Did I look at the schedule wrong? Because I definitely said Mizzou and South Carolina were playing next week. I'm looking at the week 3 schedule, and
Vandy,
sorry, my
South
brain is
Carolina.
just mush.
Yeah.
It's Vandy, South Carolina. Yeah, I don't know why I said Mizzou. Maybe Mizzou. That's who Mizzou has coming up. Yeah, Mizzou has South Carolina coming up in week 4. So
Mhm.
apologies. Wanted to make sure that we clean that up. But really interesting test for South Carolina coming up with the things that Mizzou has already shown and the things that Vandy has already been able to show.
Yeah, also, like, not gonna say South Carolina struggled with South Carolina State, but definitely a game that I had on the third TV for a second there. Like, not
They needed special teams touchdowns again to get them going. They needed all the Beamer ball in the world.
and hey, you know what? That's one thing they can do consistently. So maybe that's the identity. I don't know. But yeah, point being, this is just the worst way you can lose a game, right? Where you're up 10 points at the half, and then you can either say schematically or because those boys didn't believe in you or those boys got out physical, whatever it would be, you showed that you were good enough to be in this game, to be leading this game at home. It did feel like a little bit of the vintage VT that we talked about, where they walk out, to like the incredible intro, and it's like, oh man, like the place is rocking. And yeah, it's just kind of an inexcusable loss for VT, because when you lead by 2 possessions at half and then you end up getting blown out, it's kind of like, okay, well, again, like I said, we had the horses. So yeah, I think that's probably it for how you feeling about Butch Jones.
Would have probably had a better Saturday had he stayed a little bit closer to Arkansas, just a
Hmm.
little bit. But I stand by that. And just to clean it up again, I said that Whit Babcock promoted him at Cincinnati, and that's not what I meant. I meant that he gave him a raise when he was at Cincinnati, and they like had a new deal after his
Hmm.
first year there. And, which in some ways is actually kind of the same thing, but I wanted to make sure that I got on record with the right thing. I think there's a real possibility. Don't sleep on Butch, man. We don't sleep on Butch.
Hmm.
That'll be an interesting job, though. I do think that there's a lot of people that will line up for the Virginia Tech job and think that would be a really nice opportunity in the ACC.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of conferences, the SEC is 8-2 against power conference competition in non-conference play.
And the
Just
losses
thought
being Bama FSU and Texas Ohio State, right?
Yep. So remember that,
Hmm.
because 2 months from now, a lot of people, you know exactly who all of them are: Joel Klatt, Danny Cano, Stuart Mandel. They'll all tell you that the SEC is getting too much love from the selection committee, Nicole Auerbach. They'll all tell you that the SEC is just getting way too much love from the selection committee. And I am not one of these people that last year was saying 9-3 South Carolina, 9-3 Alabama, 9-3 Ole Miss needs to be in the college football playoff. Okay, I'm not one of those people.
Hmm.
But there will be people that will totally lose sight of what has happened these first 2 weeks. And it's not the same for every conference, because not every conference, the Big Ten, is going out and actually scheduling these premier non-conference matchups wherein we get to judge these sort of things and opinions are formed. Okay. Because we just watched last year's ACC champ lose its 4th consecutive game to an SEC team. Last year's Big 12 champ, we already brought up Arizona State losing to an SEC team that was 2-10 last year in 0-8 in SEC play. The SEC right now is 3-0 against the Big 12, 4-1 against the ACC, and 1-1 against the Big 10.
Hmm. And the 1-1 is like Michigan, Ohio State. It's not like they're playing Northwestern.
Yeah. So we need to remember these things. Okay. The ACC, by the way, is 3-9 in those games.
I
So
tell you what, I think the Troy Trojans were designed to just ruin my life. I was sitting there and I was like, this team that almost beat LSU in 07 did beat LSU, I think, in 18 or 17. And I'm sitting there going, they're going to smoke Clemson. And all my happiness is going to be gone, because then we would have just been the second best team to play Clemson this year. And then suddenly we're not even a top 5 team because we could barely handle La Tech. So, wow, Clemson, thank you for putting together that impressive second half. Truly.
Will's the only person that's not laughing at Clemson on Saturday. He's like, come on,
just restrict the schedule. We're not putting La Tech away, man. Come on, Davo. Don't these boys believe?
Cade, you can't get that pass tipped, man. Layer the throw.
What are you
Layer it.
doing?
Come on. What are you doing?
This isn't even. It
Rain delay.
used to be Movie Gallery Stadium in Troy, Alabama. They ain't got that anymore because that company collapsed. But I was like, man, what are they doing?
Well, on whatever app that you check your scores on, how
Mhm.
much were you refreshing that game wherein Troy jumps out to this early? What was it? Was it 16-0 to start?
I had that game on the
Um,
third TV. I think it was during a halftime. I was sweating bullets. I was like, maybe we
Dude.
suck. I don't know what's going on.
During the rain delay, Will's just refreshing every 30 seconds to be like, all right, Clemson scored a touchdown, right? Like, Clemson scored a touchdown. Clemson's going to be fine. Oh, no, it's still in a rain delay.
The effortless,
score
you
hasn't
appreciate
changed.
this out of me. The effortlessly changing from laughing at Florida to like, oh my God, are we next?
Oh, golly. Yes, LSU survives Louisiana Tech. We'll talk more about some of the issues that LSU faced against Louisiana Tech in the preview for the Florida LSU game, which just got a lot more interesting.
Yep.
Definitely in a lot of different ways.
Oh, it's gonna be game day. But anyway, I don't want to like take away from your point and like talk about my
It would
team.
have been.
Yeah.
It would have been, Will.
Yeah.
It would have been game day. Instead, game day is going to Georgia and Tennessee. But I really do think it would have been game day had Florida not done that, especially with the timing of the announcement. That's usually a really good indicator of a result that they're waiting on,
Mhm.
and then they make a decision based on that.
But yeah, just to wrap up your like actually relevant point, not my random stuff I got going on. But I mean, I will say to the Big Ten, they did go at a conference, and again, Michigan, Ohio State did play two big time games. But at the end of the day, we've talked about it, man. It's the fact that people, when everyone is rooting for something, it means that reality is usually on the other side, right? It means that we're pushing against reality. We're practicing hopium, copium, whatever it may be. So I think at its core, yeah, Nick Saban's gone. Yeah, there's not like this bastion of greatness in the SEC. But I'll be honest with you, man. When I first started working on SDS during that kind of 2015 to 20 right until 2019 probably, when it really just was like a couple of teams, that wasn't that fun, man. Like I think it really was not that fun, and it was probably harder to find stuff to write about when it was just like Alabama, Georgia, like maybe a little bit of Florida here and there. And so certainly no LSU until 2019. But point being, like this is when college football is the best, when there's no clear number one team, when it's not obviously everybody chasing. And that's where I'll give the 12 team playoff some credit and not the BCS, because how many years have we had where it's just two teams, even like Georgia and Michigan felt like that the one year until Michigan got upset by TCU, right? Where it was like these teams are just locked in, they're undefeated. And so I think that having good college football is not something we should ever root against. And so I don't want to get turned into the guy who's sitting here rooting for Alabama or rooting for Georgia every weekend, because we'll get of what Danny Cannell says. Let's just be happy that maybe the field has flattened a little bit. And I think that there's there's more out of conference games, any game or any weekend. We thought this was like a fall activity Saturday, right? And there were a lot of great games.
Kind of in the noon slate. It still was. I hope
You
you
talking
got
about
in a little
El
fall activity.
Assico? We missed Iowa State for why? That was I was clinching that whole time, and so were both teams.
A lot of punts.
That was
Really nice field goals.
That was old school. And so
Old school.
that's what I'm saying. I think that flattening the field is great for the sports fan. So, people that go out there on these horses and it's all dead. Okay, man. We've already tried that. It's not even interesting anymore.
Nope. Week 2 takeaway. College football rules.
Yeah.
Still. Imagine that.
Who'd have thought?
How about it? All right. That'll do it. Please, please, please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Set Down South, at CJ O'Gara, at Chris Hart. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.